Our next speaker this evening is also an Australian-born Syrian who spent 6 years living in the city of Homs. She moved there with her husband and her 3 children in 2008 and stayed in Syria up until the end of the first year of the crisis. She is here today to talk about what it was like to live in Syria, to live and work in Syria as a Syrian woman, and to share her experiences when she returned to Syria in December of last year as part of an Australian delegation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Elham Abood.
Good evening all. Thank you for coming today. My name is Elham Abood and I'm an Australian-born Syrian. I would just like to, before I give a background about myself, I'd just like to mention that the video that we put together about Syrian women in Australia, these women don't mention their religion because it is irrelevant to them. Because first and foremost, they are Syrian, and in Syrian culture, it is actually, they actually find it very rude to ask them what religious background they come from. So I moved to Syria in 2006 and I lived there for 6 years. I was working at an international school as a teacher in Homs. Life in Syria wasn't much different than life here in Australia. I would wake up in the morning, get the kids ready for school, I would get ready for work, and then we'd hop in the car and we'd drive to school. I worked full-time and it was convenient because I taught at the same school that my kids attended. I had a fantastic career that I enjoyed very much. It was rewarding and I was very happy there. It was a huge campus, classes from pre-KG all the way up to year 12. The school was very well equipped with 2 swimming pools, tennis courts, basketball courts, soccer fields, a track field, and even a go-kart race course for the children in the kindergarten department. I was comfortable as Syrian women enjoy their rights more than any other Middle Eastern country. Syrian women are empowered. There is an equality between men and women. I lived and witnessed this for myself. Women enjoy the right to own property, manage business independently, control their own income and assets, initiate legal proceedings on an equal footing with men. I would like to begin by just showing you a few slides.
Okay. Yep.
I'd like to introduce you to my colleagues. Basically, you'll see photos of my friends and my colleagues. Most of them were not even Syrian. They were expats from all around the world, from countries like the US, UK, Canada, Ireland, South Africa, and Australia. If any of these expat teachers felt threatened or unsafe, I doubt they would even be there, let alone live and teach in the country. This is a picture of a school excursion that we took some students on, from photos of my colleagues here. This picture was taken on an excursion in Ma'lula. Ma'lula is an ancient city in Homs that up until now still speaks Aramaic, the language of Jesus Christ. Ma'lula was invaded by the terrorist groups. They destroyed churches and burnt them down. They broke statues of Mother Mary and they tormented and killed civilians. Another picture of Halloween. Just a girls' night in. And I will take you up to this photo of Tabat Islambuli. She was the first female doctor who graduated from the Medical College of Pennsylvania in 1890. This is a remarkable achievement at a time when women across the entire world were fighting for their rights for equality and education. I would like to introduce you to Adnan Al-Araour. This is a Saudi-appointed Salafi cleric who was spreading sectarian hatred in Homs. He vowed to put Alawites and Christians into meat grinders and feed their flesh to the dogs. I will begin to talk about the first night and the beginning of the so-called jihad in Homs. So I was woken up about 1:30 in the morning with the gunshots, and all of the mosques, instead of prayer to call, it was God is great, God is great, get ready for jihad, God is great. And this was coming out from every single mosque in Homs. It was terrifying. No one knew what was going on. It was worse than any horror movie you have ever seen in your entire life. I couldn't comprehend what was going on. And there's a lot of mosques in Syria. Actually, Syria has the most mosques in the entire Arab region. And in every suburb, there's anywhere between 10 and maybe 30 mosques. And they were going off at the same time. They had subwoofers in the back of pickup trucks that were going off around in the streets, and people were just yelling. So I get out of bed and I walk to the balcony, and I see all the women on their balconies and all the men in the streets, and no one knows what's going on. People were horrified. All we could hear was gunshots and people screaming, and there was no answers to know what was happening. So the civilians took it upon themselves to make up their own neighborhood watch, and that's what they did. They cut off streets into the neighborhoods with washing machines and fridges, just to barricade it so the cars cannot go in and do drive-by shootings and kill the civilians. Some of Al-Araour's slogans and chants were, he was basically fueling the sectarian hatred and encouraging their chants against minorities with slogans like Alawites to the grave and Christians to Beirut. So from early on, people like Adnan Al-Araour were pushing for sectarian hatred in Homs, and they were trying to turn it into a sectarian war, and I think that the Syrian people caught on very quickly. He also encouraged the rape of the minorities, and he said to them that it's actually jihad and you will go to heaven for doing this. And then he began to teach them how to get out their aluminium pots and pans and start banging on them at night so people could not get any sleep. And the thing behind the pots and pan incident, and this went on for quite a while, was he actually told them that if you bang on pots and pans and say Allahu Akbar for 3 consecutive days, that the ground will open and it will swallow all the infidels. And this happened for 3 days. And so after 3 days of no sleep whatsoever and gunshots and Allahu Akbar from 12 midnight to 4 o'clock in the morning, someone decided to ring him on a Safa network in Saudi Arabia and said to him, "Our dear cleric, we have done what you asked, but yet the ground has not opened and swallowed the government and the infidels." And he said, "This is your fault because you are singing Allahu Akbar. You're not supposed to sing. God is punishing you. You must say the words." So for the next 3 weeks, that's what we lived through. From 12 midnight to 4 o'clock in the morning with God is great, Allahu Akbar. So when nothing happened, I think they just gave up and they moved on and started to attack and destroy schools and universities. They began shooting at school buses and a lot of students died. A lot of these attacks happened at exam times for university students and people sitting for their Year 12 certificate, which is equivalent to the HSC. They used RPGs to bomb universities and schools while children sat there at the crucial times while they were doing exams. There's a lot of people that died in the university in Homs because of this. So after about 2 months of living this horrific life, the Syrian civilians had enough. They were terrified, and the atrocities that the fundamentalists were committing against humanity were unacceptable. They demanded for the Syrian army to come into Homs. And this is probably, what you're going to see now is probably in complete contradiction to what you have been seeing in the media. And this is what happened when the army came into Homs. They were greeted by the school children. This is actually a photo of my 3 boys on the tank. And this was the second day when the army was in Homs. And my kids went to school and everyone was discussing the tanks and how they went and they saw them. And my kids begged me to take them. And I think as a mother, I would never put my children's life in jeopardy. If I had thought that they would be injured in any way from the Syrian Arab Army, I would never have taken there. If you actually have a look at the soldier, he is actually putting his sunglasses on my son's eyes because he couldn't see because of the reflection of the sun rays. Now I would like to introduce you to this young boy that I met in Damascus. I met him in December in Damascus in the hotel lobby. Oh. No, it's a boy. I'm getting there. So, Syrian women have suffered immensely throughout the conflict. Thousands of women and children have been killed. Women activists have been targeted and killed by terrorists. This is a young boy named Zen, who I met in Syria in December last year, which I just told you. His parents and his 2 activist sisters were murdered in front of him as he hid underneath a sofa, and he watched. He is the only surviving member of his family. Now, I'm going to tell you why I decided to return to Australia. So, as the conflict worsened in Homs, we had a lot of reporters that came in. And there was one French reporter named Jacques. They were in Homs and they had come down to see all the bombings that happened on the universities and all the atrocities that were commenced. So they wanted to see firsthand what was happening. And on that day, I had a meeting with the director of the school that I was teaching at. And I was kept back about maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And I get outside and my eldest son's like, "Mum, do you have to work at the same school that I'm at? You're always late and I'm always late getting home." I said to him, "Daniel, it was really important." So we got into the car and we drove. And all I could hear was bombs. Maybe about 10 seconds later, I get to the corner of the street where I need to turn off to get into my street to get home. And all I see is people picking up dead bodies off the ground. We missed that bomb by 30 seconds. There were women, children, and men. And one of the people that actually died was that French journalist, Jacques. So when they are bombing, they are not bombing army targets. They are not bombing areas where the army is situated. They are bombing civilian areas. They know exactly what time the children come out of school, and that's when they are bombing the neighborhoods. They want to scare people so they can lock themselves up and sit at home. They don't want women and children to get an education. They actually state that they want people to sit at home until the government falls. So could you imagine a country without education for our children for 3 years? I don't understand why the international communities keep turning a blind eye to the truth about what is happening in Syria. I would like to play a video of a girl called Zena that I interviewed in Syria, and let her tell you her story for herself.
It was great. I have work, and I used to live by myself. Renting house. I was renting house. Had a lot of friends. I was free to go, to come, even late, even if it was late. It was very nice. We had a very nice life before. I used to have short dresses, shorts, sleeveless shirts, and I completed my education in the university and worked immediately after my graduation. And I was so free. I have another friend. She was living in a Sunni area. She was the only Christian at that neighborhood. The only one, but they were living there for 30 years, I think. Her parents. She said to me, come to my house, and it's better from you being yourself alone. Come stay with me this night. I went to her house, and we had a normal night till 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. And we started to hear gunshots and the word Allahu Akbar, Hayyu ala Jihad, Allahu Akbar. And we didn't know what was going on. Her father came to us and said, go to sleep, it's nothing, but it was clear that it was something shocking. The last place, I think that it will come to this was Syria. We never think about Muslim and Alawi and Christian in Syria. Our neighbors used to be like from all. And I lost friends. Some of them left Syria. I lost my work too. And in short, I lost my life. What freedom? What freedom that I have to wear hijab? What freedom if they don't respect my point of view? It's not a revolution. It's not a freedom. Now we are living in Syria, still in Syria, and we are afraid of tomorrow. What will happen? We don't know. I love Syria very much, but I miss my life. We are living day by day. Day by day. We have no future now. I really wish that someday, every day, I wake up in the morning and I say, oh my God, it's not a nightmare. It's my life now. It became like this. The country became like this. I wish it was a nightmare.
Zena used to live on her own in the city of Homs. She has now moved back, and she lives in the village with her family with no life. Her life today is, maybe if she's lucky, a little bit of internet and a little bit of TV, because the rebels keep bombing the electricity plants. So they actually, in her village, and she lives in the mountains of Homs, they're lucky to get any electricity, and sometimes it gets cut off for days at a time because it takes so long for them to be able to fix it again. So this was at the beginning of the conflict, what she was talking about, and the reasons why many people lost their jobs is because the majority of the schools got bombed or ruined, and people were left jobless. Some people were left homeless, and a lot of the Christians in the old city of Homs, and mainly the Hamidiyya, were actually forced out of their homes. 50,000 Christians were forced out of their homes in Homs. They are still living in Syria, but they are living in the villages. That area is fully still under rebel control, and they will not let the civilians inside leave Homs city, and they have no food and no water. So the government supplies them with food, and the only way they are allowed to go get the food is that their families are kept inside with the rebels as hostages, so they can go get the food and can come back inside. I was sitting at home on a Friday, and Friday is day off in Syria, so you get Friday and Saturday off. That's their weekend. And I'm actually on the phone with my sister-in-law, and we can hear bombs going off, and she's like, "Bring the kids and come over." And I said to her, "No, you bring your kids and come over. I'm not leaving the house." And she's like, "Come on, the bombing sounds very far." And then I hear a sound, and it was like nothing I've ever heard before in my life. An RPG landed in my roof. It felt like the roof came off and the sides of the house were pulled out, and I dropped the phone, and I was running in the house like a mad woman trying to find my children. One of them was sleeping in the bed. The other was playing his PlayStation, and the third one was in the bathroom. And I was going from one room to another just trying to make sure that they were all okay. And then I took them, the three of them and myself, and I went into the bathroom. And at that time, all we can hear is people running down the stairs on top of us. And thank God that no one was injured, but there was a big hole in my roof. And I thought 2 strikes was enough. I wasn't sticking around for the third. So basically, I packed 35 kilos for me and my 3 children, and I came home. In areas composed by fundamentalist rebels, extremists have imposed oppressive rules on women and girls, reversing freedoms of movement previously exercised. They have been prevented from working and going to school, or even just leaving their home without a male guardian. There is no revolution in Syria. It is a war between Syrian society and Islamic terrorists, led by fundamentalists from 83 various countries around the world, and they are being funded by Qatar and Saudi Arabia. The Syrian women understand that the Syrian crisis is deep and complex, and that it will take time to end the fighting and rebuild the country. Syrian women are soldiers. They are lawyers, engineers, professors, housewives, medical professionals, pilots and doctors. They make up 50% of society and are determined to stop the war on Syria. They will not give up. They will not be sucked into this vacuum where they will send them back to the Stone Ages. While I was in Syria on my last visit in December and January of this year, Syrian women from several provinces that I met had the same sentiment and statement to say. People around the world all dream of or look forward to the future. We dream of going back 3 years to the way we used to live before the crisis. That is the truth, and that is what is happening in Syria. Thank you.